how exactly did researchers first begin conducting this study?
Well, this is a game changer, because we used to think that it was just the Neanderthals. 50,000 years ago, that's it. It was just them and us. Now we have the Denisovans.
Then in Russia, in Denisova cave, they find a single pinky bone from a little finger. And what they discover is this isn't a Neanderthal. This isn't an anatomically modern human being. This is another human species who they named the Denisovans.
In 2008, Russian archaeologists pulled a tiny bone from the dirt inside a cave in Siberia. It was about the size of a fingernail, a fragment from the pinky finger of a teenage girl who died roughly 90,000 years ago. Nobody thought much of it at first. The bone looked ordinary. The kind of thing you could hold between two fingers and barely notice. But when geneticists at the Max Planck Institute in Germany extracted DNA from that fragment, the lab went silent. The DNA did not match modern humans. It did not match Neanderthals. It belonged to an entirely new species of human. A species that had walked this planet for over 280,000 years. A species that had lived, hunted, made tools, raised families, and buried their dead. And nobody on Earth knew they existed until that moment. Guys, please like and subscribe because it really helps us to reach more people. There is a cave in the Altai Mountains of southern Siberia, roughly 100 miles from where Russia meets China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan. It is not especially large, about 2,900 square feet, roughly the size of an average American house. Generation after generation lived and died in this one spot, leaving behind 22 separate layers of sediment, tools, bones, and ash. Each layer is a chapter, and nobody realized the most important chapter had been misread for decades. That cave got its modern name from a Russian hermit named Denis, who lived there in the 1700s. He was a religious man looking for solitude. He had no idea that his quiet home would eventually give its name to an entire species of human being. Russian paleontologists started digging in the cave in the 1970s. A scientist named Nikolai Ovodov led the early work. He was actually looking for the remains of ancient wolves and other canids. But what he and his team found was far more interesting. Stone tools, animal bones cracked open for marrow, evidence of fire pits where meals had been cooked and shared, layer after layer of human activity stretching back further than anyone expected. Everyone assumed the cave had been used by Neanderthals and early modern humans. That was the safe, logical conclusion. Two known species, one ancient cave. Simple story. Nobody imagined a third player was hiding in the sediment the whole time. Nobody imagined that the most important discovery in the history of human evolution was sitting in the dirt, waiting to be found. And when it finally was, it was so small that it almost got thrown away. Then came the finger bone, and everything we thought we knew about human evolution cracked wide open. The DNA that broke the family tree. The bone fragment was shipped to the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany. And this is one of the most advanced ancient DNA laboratories on the planet. Geneticist Svante Pääbo and his team extracted mitochondrial DNA from the specimen. Mitochondrial DNA passes from mother to child. It works like a biological clock that scientists can use to measure how closely two species are related. Here is how those measurements work. The mitochondrial genome contains about 16,500 base pairs. The difference between modern humans and Neanderthals is approximately 202 base pairs. That is about 1.2%. Close relatives, distant cousins, but still in the same neighborhood on the family tree. The finger bone from Siberia differed from modern humans by 385 base pairs. That is 2.3%. nearly double the distance between us and Neanderthals. This girl belonged to a species that had split from our lineage roughly 600,000 years ago. She was still human, but a completely different kind of human. A kind the scientific world had never seen before. They called her X-Woman at first. Later, the species was named Denisovan, after the hermit whose cave had kept their existence hidden for 250,000 years. And just like that, from a bone you could lose between the cushions of your couch, an entire branch of the human family was discovered. No skeleton, no skull, no grand burial chamber, just a fragment and the ancient DNA trapped inside it. But the real shock was still coming. The girl with two species in her blood. Among the bone fragments pulled from Denisova cave, one specimen made headlines around the world. Scientists labeled it Denisova 11. When they sequenced the DNA, the results were unprecedented. This individual had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. She was a first-generation hybrid, half one species, half another. The scientific community nicknamed her Deni. Bone analysis suggests Deni was at least 13 years old when she died. She never reached adulthood. We do not know what killed her: disease, injury, starvation, the brutal Siberian winter. Any of these could have ended her life, but her existence proved something extraordinary. Neanderthals and Denisovans were not just living near each other, they were sharing caves, sharing meals, forming families, having children together, and this was not a one-time accident. Further genetic analysis revealed that roughly 17% of the Denisovan genome contains Neanderthal DNA. That kind of mixing does not happen from a single encounter. It happens over tens of thousands of years. Sustained contact, repeated interbreeding. Two distinct species of human, living side by side in the same valleys and the same caves, raising hybrid children across thousands of generations. Close your eyes and picture that scene for a moment. A cold Siberian evening, maybe 90,000 years ago. Snow on the ground. The temperature well below freezing. A fire flickering at the mouth of a limestone cave, throwing orange light across the rock walls. Two groups of people sitting together in the warmth. They look different from each other. One group is stockier, with heavy brow ridges and powerful shoulders built for cold weather survival. The other has slightly different skull shapes and massive jaws with teeth twice the size of yours. But they are not fighting. They are not competing for territory. They are sharing a meal of roasted deer meat and roots pulled from the frozen ground. They are keeping each other warm. They are raising a daughter who carries both bloodlines in her body. A girl we would one day call Deni. A girl who would die before her 15th birthday and leave behind a single bone fragment 2 centimeters long. And 90,000 years later, that tiny bone would rewrite everything we know about what it means to be human. But the Denisovans were not confined to one cave in Siberia. Their reach stretched far beyond what anyone imagined. A jawbone on the roof of the world. For years after the initial discovery, scientists assumed the Denisovans were a small, isolated population. A minor branch of the human tree that lived and died in one corner of Central Asia. That assumption was destroyed in 2019. Back in 1980, a Buddhist monk had discovered a partial jawbone inside Baixia Karst Cave on the Tibetan Plateau in China. For decades, nobody knew what it was. It sat in storage, unlabeled and unstudied. Then researchers applied protein analysis to the specimen. The proteins matched Denisovan markers. This jawbone was found over 1,700 miles from Denisova Cave, on the Tibetan Plateau, at an elevation of more than 10,000 feet above sea level. This is one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The air is thin, the oxygen levels are dangerously low, the cold is punishing. Most modern humans cannot function at that altitude without weeks of slow adjustment. But the Denisovans did not just survive there, they thrived, and scientists figured out exactly how. Modern Tibetans carry a special gene called EPAS1. This gene allows their bodies to function efficiently in low oxygen, high altitude conditions. It is the reason Tibetans can live at 15,000 feet, while most lowlanders would collapse. When researchers traced the origin of EPAS-1, it did not come from any known modern human population. It came from the Denisovans. The ancient inhabitants of the Tibetan plateau passed this survival gene directly into the Tibetan population through interbreeding thousands of years ago. Think about that. A species is still keeping people alive today. Their bodies are gone. Their tools have crumbled. But their DNA is still working inside living humans, still adapting, still saving lives on a frozen plateau on the other side of the world from where they were first discovered. But the Tibetan plateau was just one piece of a much bigger map, not one species, at least three. In 2019, researchers from Indonesia, New Zealand, and Singapore collected DNA from 161 modern individuals living across the Indonesian islands. They compared those genomes against known Denisovan DNA from the Siberian cave. The results stunned the scientific community. They found not one but two distinct Denisovan genetic signatures in modern Indonesians. And both of these groups looked genetically different from the Denisovans found in Siberia. That means there were at least three separate Denisovan populations spread across the largest continent on Earth. One lived in Siberia and Central Asia. A second lived in mainland Southeast Asia, around what is now Thailand and Vietnam. While a third called the tropical islands of Indonesia home. These three groups had been separated from each other for over 250,000 years. That is longer than our own species has existed on this planet. They had diverged so much genetically that researcher Murray Cox from New Zealand's Massey University made a statement that shook the field. He said one of these groups was so distinct that it should probably be classified as an entirely new species, if Neanderthals deserve their own species name. He argued, then this group does too. We are not talking about one small tribe hiding in a cave. We are talking about at least three distinct populations of an unknown human species spread from the frozen tundra of Siberia to the tropical islands near Australia. They conquered every environment on the continent: Arctic cold, mountain altitude, jungle heat. They were not a footnote in human history. And then scientists found something that made the story even stranger. When they analyzed the Denisovan genome in detail, they discovered that about 4% of it came from an even older, even more mysterious source. An unknown archaic human species that diverged from our common ancestor over 1 million years ago. We do not have a name for these people. We do not have a single bone. They exist only as a genetic shadow buried inside the DNA of the Denisovans themselves. A ghost within a ghost. The interbreeding between these super-archaic humans and the ancestors of Denisovans happened over 700,000 years ago. The two populations had been separated for well over 1 million years before they came together. That is the most distantly related interbreeding event ever recorded in the human family tree. To put that distance in perspective, the modern humans and Neanderthals were separated for about 750,000 years when they interbred. These super-archaics were separated from the Denisovan lineage for over 1 million. And here is the mind-bending part. There are people walking the earth today who carry genetic code from a species that split from our lineage over 1 million years ago. A species we have never found. What are the species that exist only as a shadow inside a shadow? Layers of extinct humanity stacked inside the genome of living, breathing people. What they looked like. We have so few Denisovan fossils that reconstructing their appearance has been one of the hardest puzzles in modern science. But researchers found a way. By analyzing DNA methylation patterns, chemical tags on genes that control how physical features develop, scientists built a rough portrait. The picture that emerged was striking. Denisovans likely had wide, projecting faces with large noses, low, sloping foreheads, powerful, protruding jaws designed for chewing tough, unprocessed food, roots, tubers, nuts, raw meat in the dead of winter. Their skulls were elongated and flattened compared to ours. Their bodies were stocky and broad-chested, built for survival in cold climates. Shorter than modern humans, but significantly wider and more muscular. Their teeth tell us even more. The molars found in Denisova cave are enormous, larger than those of any modern human, larger than most Neanderthal teeth. Some are closer in size to teeth from Homo erectus, a species that lived nearly 2 million years ago. These are the teeth of people who ate hard, brutal food. Food that required serious jaw power just to chew. Their skin was likely dark, their hair and eyes brown. But given that they ranged from Siberia to Indonesia for over 250,000 years, there was almost certainly enormous variation between populations. Us northern groups living in reduced sunlight may have developed lighter skin. Southern groups in tropical environments may have looked completely different. We simply do not know yet. The fossil record is too thin, but the DNA tells us they were diverse. Perhaps more diverse than modern humans are. They also made things. Stone scrapers, notched blades, pointed tools dating back over 280,000 years have been found in the Denisovan layers of the cave. In more recent layers, and something unexpected appears. Ornaments, a marble ring, an ivory pendant, a polished green bracelet made of chlorite, a bone needle thin enough to sew fitted clothing. Whether Denisovans or early modern humans made these objects is still debated, but the idea that Denisovans crafted jewelry and possibly sewed clothing challenges every assumption we have about so-called primitive humans. The blood that refused to die. When Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa and into Asia, they met the Denisovans, and they did not just compete, they merged. The interbreeding left a permanent genetic mark on billions of people alive today. Modern Melanesians, including people from Papua New Guinea and Aboriginal Australians, carry between 4 and 6% Denisovan DNA. That means roughly 1 out of every 20 genes in their body came from a species that has been physically extinct for thousands of years. In Tibetans, Denisovan genes help them breathe at extreme altitude. In Papua New Guineans, Denisovan genes strengthen the immune system against tropical diseases. In Inuit populations, Denisovan genes affect how the body processes and distributes fat, critical for Arctic survival. In Latin American populations, researchers discovered that a Denisovan gene influences lip shape and facial structure. The Denisovans did not go quietly. Their bodies disappeared. Their caves were swallowed by time. But their DNA jumped species. It embedded itself inside Homo sapiens and rode our expansion across the entire planet. It adapted, it evolved, it found new purposes inside a new host. The species went extinct, but their genetic code refused to die, and they may have held on far longer than anyone thought. The same research by Murray Cox that identified multiple Denisovan species also found evidence that interbreeding between Denisovans and modern humans may have continued as recently as 15,000 years ago on the islands of Southeast Asia. If that date is accurate, it means Denisovans themselves may have survived until roughly 14,500 years ago. That is staggering. By that time, modern humans were already building permanent settlements. The Ice Age was ending. Agriculture was about to begin. And somewhere on a tropical island, the last Denisovans were still alive, still carrying 280,000 years of history in their bones. And then, finally, they were gone. Or were they? Their bodies vanished, their tools crumbled to dust. Their caves were buried under jungle and rock and centuries of forgetting. But their DNA survived. It jumped ship. It embedded itself inside Homo sapiens and rode our expansion across the entire planet. It is inside people right now, working, adapting. A species that died is still influencing how people look, how they breathe, how they fight disease, and how they survive at the edges of the habitable world. And that raises a question that scientists are only beginning to ask. If we carry their genes and their genes are still shaping our bodies, are the Denisovans truly extinct? Or have they found a way to survive that no other species ever has? Well, not through fossils, not through monuments, but through us. An entire species of human was discovered from a bone smaller than a penny. No grand tomb, no preserved skeleton, just a fragment and the ancient code hidden inside it. And scientists believe there is still more to find. More caves waiting to be opened, more bone fragments waiting to be tested. More ghost species hiding in the double helix of living people who have no idea what they are carrying inside their own cells. Makes you wonder, how many other species of human walked this planet that we have never found? How many chapters of our own story are still buried in the dirt, waiting for someone to dig them up? And when you look in the mirror, whose eyes are really looking back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this changed the way you think about what it means to be human, hit that like button and subscribe. The human story is far stranger than anything we were taught in school. We are just getting started.